Okay, so we'll kickstart with we've essentially just ironed out the three problem statements in front of us. What's working well with Gen Zs, what are the friction that we are facing, and then according to us, what the playbook should look like going forward. So what we've discussed is that what generally works well with Gen Zs is having extreme clarity on their own journey, their own growth paths within an organization. So if as an organization we are able to give them that clarity, we would also end up retaining and creating a whole lot of engagement with them. Um, when we talk about culture, we were essentially talking about how there are broad values that drive an organization, and then within that, every team drives its own culture. So as a role of a leader or as a role of an HR leader or a CEO within the organization, the idea is to bridge that gap and not and make sure that the microcultures don't stray too far away from the broad level values that an organization carries. And I think the sooner we're able to bridge that gap, the dissonance between identifying with your team versus identifying with an organization also reduces. We also talk about psychological safety. I think it can work well if, given that there are multi-generational team members within an organization, especially right now, it is imperative on us to drive the culture of safety within an organization, making sure that people feel validated, people, no matter the concerns, no matter as dramatic or as absurd it may sound at that point in time from our perspective, at the end of the day, what really helps us translate is to get to their level and understand their perspective and valuing and just acknowledging that we understand what you feel and we're there for you. So creating that circle of trust with the Gen Zs. The fourth and the fifth point. So we talk about fearlessness. I think one place where Gen Zs kind of really beat us as oldies in the system is to really be fearless in their demands, in their questions, in their thoughts, in their ideas. So they have that knack of really putting us in uncomfortable positions by asking the most uncomfortable questions. So what it helps is, as an organization, you're always forward thinking. You're not kind of laid back and you're not comfortable in what used to happen 10 years back, but you're always questioning what's happening and how can we challenge things. It's a mindset that we also kind of adapt into. And what has certainly worked well across all of our organizations is supporting the Gen Zs with wellness programs. I think right now, up until a decade back, wellness was still a taboo within organizations. We still used to be very, very few organizations kind of led the charters of wellness within the organization. Right now, I think those who don't are the outliers and are the employers of absolute no choice for Gen Z. So having a well-equipped wellness team in-house always goes a long way in supporting Gen Zs and supporting whatever cognitive and cognitive dissimilarities that they bring from their own culture to our corporate setup. You want to go for the friction piece?
Sure. Let me just read firstly what we read. Okay, I think yes, friction. Some of the friction points that we've listed, of course, not in any order. I think different organizations have different friction points, but some of them that we were able to list is, of course, on wanting instant gratification in compensation, in promotion, in designation changes, etc., which not many times, considering the levels that an organization has, you can fuel that sort of gratification. So I think that could be one of the areas. Obviously, there are expectations in terms of, there's so much of competition around them. They are very competitive in that sense. So they're always looking at what the person sitting next to them is getting or is doing. So there is always that. That is an area where I think could lead to a bit of friction there. In a multi-generational workforce, I think it's also very important for some of the senior, or so to say, the Gen X or maybe the baby boomers kind of people to understand that where is the line between challenging because today they like to challenge, and where is the line between challenging and arrogance? Actually, in my opinion, it's a very, very thin line. So either some people may think that challenging is arrogance. So it's equally important for the Gen Zs to know and respectfully convey their challenges. At the same time, the Gen X and the senior folks must understand that not necessarily every challenge is an arrogance. So I think it works both ways. This is in my opinion, it's one of the major friction points. I think thin line between challenge and arrogance. Some of the other things that we've listed, of course, another friction point is that they want to be heard, which comes again from a need for psychological safety. Having an open door policy, I think, is very important. You may not have all the answers, but you should be open to listen to all the kind of questions that they have, and reply to them with the most transparent opinion. I think that really works very well with the Gen Z. Did I miss anything? I think, of course, yes, averse to slow decision making. I think Gen Z is like they want instant gratification, they want quick decision making. Most of the typical corporates which have existed for a long time, they have a certain process. That process needs to be followed. So quick decision making, I think, works very well. If it is a slow decision making process, at least be engaged with them to share why there is a slowness in the process or why it's taking time. So the usual thing, at least which I always follow, is tell them that we are slow, we are sure, we are slow. So that's how we are. We are slow, but yet we make sure that we are sure. So I think that's very important, and they see sense in that. Okay. So we want to go to the next one?
Yeah,
the playbook, yes. Anyone? Salil? Or do you want to add anything on the friction that I missed?
We have a long list of items for you guys to take forward.
Yes, a lot of points. I'll probably cover 3-4 of them. So on the playbook for 2025, I think one thing which really stood out was that companies need to play very hard on the mission statements. And what we saw in our group, at least, is when you're talking about sustainability and stuff like how does your work actually matters at the end of the day in terms of the impact it's creating for the larger world, it really strikes hard with such cohorts, talent cohorts. So playing on the culture, on the purpose, ensuring that your work has a meaning to it beyond the titles, etc., is very important. Second, also what we realized is that this generation, the last group spoke about entitlement. It's also the abundance of choices which they have, which basically means that these people also look for customization in policies and benefits. And when we are talking about large companies, it becomes difficult to do it at scale. So that's something which companies are in progress of doing, that how do you customize benefits portfolio, policies, etc., which can cater to all these groups. Then we spoke about a bit about employer branding. I think companies these days are still traditionally relying on the models like LinkedIn, etc., to do the employer branding. We thought that still not engaging at the level at which these people are playing, which is socials and Instagram and all of that. So there is a huge room to play on those platforms for companies also and build the employer brand. And the last one was a bit around how Gen Z has views around geopolitics, around things which are happening across the world, the wars, the LGBTQ rights, etc. And somewhere the corporates actually shy away from having a point of view on that. So how can companies enable some kind of employee resource groups where people come together and talk about it, and so that they have their voice to share without any judgments, and it gives them a room to voice out their opinions. Would you want to add anything?
So I think it's also very important to understand as an organization that what exactly are their motivators, right? So these days Gen Zs are more concerned on what kind of titles we kind of assign to them. So fancy designations is what is lucrative for them. Then at the same time, they are also concerned about what kind of rewards, recognition programs we have, and what's the apart from compensation, what extra we are actually giving them on the table. Then flexibility again is a very important thing. So apart from work-life balance, what matters to them is that whether the employer is able to understand, their needs and what exactly the organization is doing, to kind of meet their expectations. So how flexible is the organization? I think DEI is also one of the point that we have covered here, that these days, again, the Gen Zs are very much concerned how inclusive the organization is, right? So not just in case of gender diversity, but also in case of equity and inclusion, what organization is doing to promote these aspects. Anything else? I think, yeah. So I think that we have covered everything here. Any questions? No? All right, thank you so much.